There are things that cannot be unsaid. Things that, once they leave a person's mouth, change the shape of the room permanently, change the shape of the relationship, the shape of the life, the shape of everything that was assumed to be stable and isn't anymore. Most of those things come out in private, in cars on the way home from somewhere, in kitchens after the children are in bed, in the kind of quiet that accumulates before a hard conversation that has been avoided for too long. But every once in a while, one of those things comes out in the middle of a game show, in front of a studio audience, in front of a host who has seen a great many things on that stage and who thought, until this moment, that he had seen most of what the stage had to offer, and in front of a woman who came to win $20,000 and ended up winning something harder and more valuable and more permanently hers than any prize money has ever been. This is that story. It is a story about what happens when a question gets asked, and the answer that comes out is not the answer anyone in the room was expecting. It is a story about a woman who heard the truth live on national television and decided, in front of everyone, exactly what she was going to do with it. And it is a story about what doing not hold back actually looks like when it comes from the right place, not from anger alone, but from a woman who suddenly and completely knew where she stood and was done pretending otherwise. Hit that like button and subscribe right now before we go any further, because stories like this one, stories about the moment the truth arrives without permission, and what you do when it does, are exactly what this channel is here for, and we come back with one every single week. Now let us talk about Nicole. Nicole Washington was 39 years old when she appeared on Family Feud in the spring of 2024, and she was, by every observable measure, a woman who had put her whole self into building something. 12 years of marriage to a man named Jerome. 2 children, Marcus, 11, and Destiny, 8, who were, by all accounts, good-hearted and well-adjusted children who had inherited their mother's directness and their father's easy social charm in the specific combination that makes a kid a pleasure to be around. Nicole was a middle school science teacher in Charlotte, North Carolina, with 9 years in the same school, which told you something about her. That she was not someone who left when things got hard, who persisted through the parts of a commitment that require more than enthusiasm to sustain. Her students, who found her on various social media platforms years after moving on from her class, universally described her as the teacher who did not let you settle for a wrong answer when you were capable of the right one. The teacher who noticed when you were having a bad week and addressed it directly. The teacher who held the standard precisely because she believed you could meet it. Jerome Washington was 42, an insurance broker who worked largely from home and who was, by the account of everyone who met him socially, the charming one in the marriage. He had the easy, warm, quick-laughing social energy of someone for whom other people's approval comes without effort, and he had spent 42 years collecting that approval with the practiced ease of someone who has always received it. He was a good-looking man in the way that certain men in their early 40s are good-looking, with enough of the early attractiveness still present and enough of the year's additional depth to make the combination better than either element alone. He liked being liked. He was good at being liked. He had, over the course of 12 years of marriage to Nicole, apparently been extending the project of being liked in directions that she had not been fully informed of. The Family Feud team had been Nicole's idea. She had always wanted to do it. Jerome had been enthusiastic in the way he was enthusiastic about most things Nicole wanted, readily, cheerfully, without the kind of engagement that costs anything. The rest of the team was Nicole's sister Tamara, 36, who was a nurse with the quick clinical intelligence of someone whose entire professional life had trained her to see things accurately and respond to them fast. Tamara had a way of looking at situations that stripped the decorative elements away quickly and located the actual thing she was looking at, which was a professional asset and occasionally an interpersonal one, and which was going to become, on this particular afternoon, significant in a way that nobody had anticipated. Their cousin Darius, 34, was a high school basketball coach who had been close to Nicole their entire lives, and who had, over the years, developed a quiet but thorough concern about Jerome that he had mentioned once to Tamara and never to Nicole, because Nicole had not asked, and because the timing had never been right, and because the evidence had always been the kind that a person could explain away if they were inclined to, and Nicole had been inclined to. Nicole's friend from college, Kezia, 39, rounded out the team, a marketing professional with the sharp observational eye of someone who has spent 15 years reading rooms professionally, and who had, in the preceding months, noticed several things she had not yet decided what to do with. They had prepared. They had practiced. They had done the things families do in the weeks before a taping. The quizzes, the strategies, the friendly arguments about who was going to be better at fast money-style questions and who was going to be the anchor. Jerome had been charming in practice, as he was charming in everything, giving answers quickly and with a showmanship that made the sessions fun. Nicole had been, as in everything, thorough, practicing not just the giving of answers but the understanding of how surveys worked, what kinds of things large groups of people tended to agree on, where the safe answers were, and where the unexpected ones might hit. She came to the studio ready. She had prepared for the game she thought she was playing. The competing family that day was the Harrison family from Raleigh, a tight-knit group of 4 siblings and their mother who had been talking to each other across kitchen tables, and at family reunions long enough to have developed an almost telepathic sense of what the other was going to say, which is the single greatest asset in Family Feud and which they deployed with impressive effectiveness in the early rounds. The game was close. Both families played well. The audience was engaged and energetic. Steve Harvey was doing what he does in those early rounds, keeping the temperature warm, finding the funny, making everyone in the room feel like the afternoon was exactly what it was supposed to be. It was in the 3rd round that the game changed, not because of strategy, not because of a score shift or a particularly impressive answer, because Steve Harvey asked Jerome Washington a question. It was a standard Family Feud survey question. The category was things a man does when he is trying to impress a woman. Standard. The kind of category the show had used 100 times, generating the expected survey responses: dress nicely, buy flowers, take her to dinner, compliment her, pay attention, show off. The kind of question with a predictable architecture of answers that most people, thinking quickly, arrive at in the obvious order. Jerome buzzed in. He got control of the board for his family. He gave a couple of answers. The board filled. The round was going well for the Washington family, with the comfortable lead that comes from playing a category in your wheelhouse. Steve Harvey was engaged and warm. The audience was with them. And then Steve asked Jerome in the specific, casual, good-natured way he asks the personal questions that bridge the game into the human element. "Jerome, man, when was the last time you tried to impress a woman? What did you do?" Jerome laughed. He had the laugh of someone who finds the question funny for a reason he is not going to share. He said something about taking his wife out for their anniversary. He gestured toward Nicole. Steve Harvey looked at Nicole. Nicole smiled the smile of a wife who has heard her husband claim credit for romantic gestures in social settings and is playing the supportive role required of the moment. And then Jerome said something else. He said it in the continuing flow of the answer, without apparent awareness of what he was doing, with the easy, unguarded candor of someone who is relaxed and in front of cameras, and running on the social autopilot of a charming man who is used to being charming without consequences. He said that lately he had been putting in a lot of effort, actually. He said he had been, and here his sentence had a quality, a looseness, a reaching for an answer that was not quite the right answer for the question he was supposed to be answering. He had been, making time, making sure certain people felt appreciated. He stopped himself. Approximately 1 full beat too late, the room did not react immediately. What rooms do in those moments before the collective understanding arrives is go very still in a way that is not quite silence, but is the condition just before it. Steve Harvey's expression changed in the specific way it changes when something has been received that he is cataloging in real time, when something has arrived that he did not anticipate, and that he is now deciding what to do with. Nicole was not in that condition. Nicole did not need to catalog. Nicole, who had been standing beside her husband for 12 years, and who had spent the last 3 months cataloging things she had not yet allowed herself to fully name, received what Jerome had just said with the specific, physical clarity of a woman for whom a sentence has just confirmed something she has been carrying without adequate language for. She looked at Jerome. Jerome was looking at the floor with the expression of a man whose autopilot has just landed him somewhere significantly more consequential than he intended. Tamara, who had the clinical instinct for seeing things accurately, and who had been the first person in the room to understand what had just happened, looked at Nicole with the tight, still expression of a sister who is watching something unfold that she has been afraid of watching unfold, and who does not know yet what she is going to be asked to do. Darius looked at his shoes. Kezia had gone very still beside him. Steve Harvey said, quietly and without any of the game show energy, "Jerome, do you want to say something to your wife right now?" Jerome looked up. He looked at Steve Harvey. He looked at Nicole. And whatever he had been running on, the autopilot, the charm, the practiced ease of being a man who had been getting away with things for long enough that getting away with them had become the default expectation, whatever it was had stopped running. He looked at Nicole the way a man looks at someone when the story he has been telling has just been interrupted by the actual story, and the two stories are not compatible, and there is no version of this moment in which the distance between them does not become visible. He said her name. He said, "Nicole." Nicole looked at him. She looked at him with the specific, complete attention of a woman who has just understood something she has been almost understanding for months, and who is now in the full clarity of understanding it, and who is deciding in real time in front of Steve Harvey and a studio audience and whoever was watching at home, what she is going to do with the clarity. She said, "I know." 2 words. They landed in the room with the weight of everything they contained, which was 12 years and 2 children and a house and a life and 3 months of almost knowing and now just knowing. The audience heard them. Steve Harvey heard them. Everyone heard what they meant. Jerome said her name again. Nicole held up one hand. It was not a dramatic gesture. It was the gesture of a woman who is not interested in the next sentence because she already has all the information she came here with, and she is deciding what she is going to do next. And what she is going to do next does not involve listening to Jerome Washington's next sentence. She looked at Steve Harvey, and she said something that became, in the days and weeks and months following the broadcast, one of the most quoted things ever said on that stage by someone who had not come to say it. She said, "Steve, I would like to keep playing if that's okay. I came here to win money for my kids. Jerome can do whatever he needs to do, but I am not done." The studio was completely silent for exactly 1 second. And then it was not silent at all, because the audience, which had just watched a woman absorb information that most people would need to sit down to receive, and had instead straightened and stated what she was going to do next, responded in the full, involuntary, sustained way of people who have just witnessed something they were not prepared to witness, and who are expressing in the only collective way available to them that they have received it fully and that they are with her. Steve Harvey looked at Nicole for a moment. He looked at her the way he looks at people when they have done something that he was not expecting, and that has shown him something he is going to think about for a long time. He said, "You want to play?" Nicole said, "I want to win." Steve Harvey turned to the audience and said, with the quiet conviction of a man who has just encountered something that requires no elaboration, "That is that woman right there." Jerome Washington stepped back from the podium. He did not leave the stage dramatically. He simply made himself less present, moved to the edge of the family line, went quiet, stopped being the charming center of anything because the room had reorganized itself around Nicole and there was nowhere else in it for him to be. Tamara moved to stand closer to her sister. Darius stood up straighter. Kezia looked at Nicole with the expression of a woman who has been carrying something on behalf of her friend for months and is now watching her friend pick it up herself. The Washington family, minus Jerome's active participation, minus the charming social ease that had been one of their assets in the early rounds, minus everything that the afternoon had been when it started, played the rest of the game differently than they had played it before. They played it with Nicole at the absolute center of everything, the way a family plays when one person has become, in a specific moment, the person they are all playing for. Tamara was sharp and fast. She gave answers with the clinical precision of someone who has sharpened her accuracy under pressure for years, and who is applying that same sharpening now in the most important context she has ever applied it. Darius was steady and reliable in the way he always was, the quiet competence of a man who shows up. Kezia was good, focused in the way of someone who has been waiting for an occasion to be fully useful and has found it. And Nicole, at the center of all of it, played like someone who has just decided something about herself and whose entire body and mind have organized around the decision. She was exceptional. Not exceptional in the circumstances, which would have been enough exceptional by any standard. She gave answers that hit. She gave them fast. She gave them with the specific, unsentimental precision of a science teacher who knows that the right answer exists and that the job is to find it, not to feel good about the attempt. She won the face-off in the 4th round with an answer so accurate and so immediate that the Harrison family's representative, a 32-year-old woman named Brianna who had been excellent all afternoon, looked at Nicole with the specific respect of one competitive woman recognizing another and said, just loud enough, "That's a good answer." Nicole received the acknowledgement with a nod that was brief and correct and did not require anything additional. The Washington family won the main game. Jerome, at the edge of the family line, applauded with the slightly mechanical quality of someone going through motions while most of themselves is somewhere else. Nobody looked at him. The game was over for him in a way that had nothing to do with the score. They went to fast money. Tamara went first. She was the right choice, the person whose instincts under pressure were most reliable, whose clinical training had built in her the capacity to produce accurate answers quickly when the situation required it. She scored 131 points. Then Nicole stepped to the podium. She stood there for a moment before Steve asked the first question. She stood the way people stand when they have made a decision and are standing in it. Back straight, eyes forward. The specific physical posture of someone who is not managing anything in this moment, who has cleared the decks of everything that is not the task directly in front of her, who is about to do the one thing she came here to do and who is going to do it completely. Steve Harvey looked at her. He said, "You ready?" Nicole said. "I have been ready," he asked. She answered, 5 questions, 18 seconds. All 5 answers hit the board. 3 of them were the #1 survey response. The combined total for the Washington family was 309 points. They had won $20,000. The audience response was not the reflexive applause of a game show crowd rewarding a good score. It was the full, extended, sustained, completely genuine response of 200 people who had been on a journey with this woman for an hour and who were releasing everything the journey had contained into the one sound available to a crowd. Several people were on their feet. Some were crying. Several were doing both simultaneously, which is a thing that happens when a room has been carrying something and finally gets permission to put it down. Steve Harvey brought Nicole the check. He held it out to her and she took it and held it and looked at it and then looked at him and she said, "This is for Marcus and Destiny." She said it simply, not performing it. Just stating it for the record in the clear, direct way she stated things because she was a science teacher who believed in precision and she wanted the record to be precise about what this money was and who it was for. Steve Harvey said, "I know, and they are lucky to have you." Nicole looked at the check. She looked at her sister. She looked at Darius and Kezia. She looked at Jerome, who was standing at the far edge of everything, apart in the way that people become apart when the room has reorganized around someone else. She did not say anything to him. She turned back to Steve Harvey and said, "Thank you for letting me finish the game." Steve Harvey said, "You finished the game, I just watched." The episode aired 6 weeks later. The clip, the full sequence from Jerome's unguarded half-sentence through Nicole's 2 words through her statement that she was not done, spread with the specific, urgent velocity of something that touches something real in a very large number of people simultaneously. Women who had been in the middle of knowing something they had not yet allowed themselves to fully name shared it with the specific, private recognition of someone seeing their own experience reflected. Women who had been through what Nicole was in the middle of and had come out the other side shared it with the retrospective understanding of people who have covered that specific distance and know what it cost and what it built. Women who had watched someone they loved go through, it shared it with the complicated mix of remembered helplessness and vicarious relief that comes from seeing the person you love make the decision you always hoped they would make. But it was not only women. Men who had watched someone they cared about absorb this kind of thing in silence for too long shared it. People who had been in the room when a truth arrived without warning and had not known what to do shared it as a demonstration of what you could do. Not the only thing, not the right thing for every situation, but one version of what it looked like when a person organized themselves around the truth rather than around the management of someone else's comfort. Therapists and counselors shared it in professional networks as an example of something they rarely saw demonstrated in real time. The specific, acute capacity to receive devastating information without either collapsing or performing composure, to feel what you feel while simultaneously deciding what you are going to do, to let those 2 things happen in the same body at the same time without requiring either of them to wait for the other. Nicole gave one interview, 3 months after the episode aired, to a publication focused on women navigating major life transitions. She said that the thing people most wanted to know was how she had done it, how she had stood there and kept playing, and that her honest answer was that she had not thought about it. She said that when Jerome's sentence landed and she understood what it meant, the thought that came was not about Jerome. It was not about the marriage or the betrayal or what came next. The thought that came was, "I came here for something and I am not leaving without it." She said that was not bravery. She said that was her understanding of what she was there to do and her refusal to let someone else's choices take that from her. She said she had been not letting other people's choices take things from her for 9 years of teaching middle school science, and that it turned out the skill transferred. She said the hardest part of the afternoon was not the moment it happened. The hardest part was the car ride home. When the adrenaline of the game was gone and the full weight of what had been confirmed arrived in the quiet of the car with the check on the seat beside her and her sister driving and nobody saying anything for a long time. She said Tamara had eventually said, very quietly, that she was sorry. Nicole had said she knew. Then they had driven the rest of the way in the kind of silence that is not the absence of communication but a form of it. The silence of two people who love each other and understand that some things cannot yet be talked about because they are still too large and too fresh and too close, and that sitting beside each other in the car is enough for now, and the talking can happen later. She used the prize money to take Marcus and Destiny to Disney World in July, as she had told Steve Harvey she was going to do. She had not told them she was going until they were in the car on the way to the airport, because she had wanted the pure, unmanaged surprise of it, the exact kind of joy that cannot be anticipated or prepared for, only received. She said Destiny had cried, the specific overwhelmed crying of an 8-year-old who has received something bigger than she knew how to contain. She said Marcus had tried very hard not to cry and had not entirely succeeded. She said she had not tried not to cry and had not cried because she was out of tears for that particular month, but that she had felt something she had been looking for and not quite finding in the months leading up to July, which was the clean, uncomplicated joy of a present moment that did not contain any weight from the past or anxiety about the future. She said it lasted for 4 days. She said 4 days was enough. She went back to Charlotte and went back to school and went back to her classroom where her students came in every morning and needed the version of her that held the standard because she believed they could meet it. She gave that version of herself to them every day, the way she had for 9 years, because the classroom had always been the place where she was most entirely herself, and because nothing that had happened in a game show studio in the spring had changed that. She said in the interview that she was grateful for that she had a place where she knew exactly who she was and what she was for, and that having it had made the rest of the year survivable in a way that it might not have been if she had gone home to an emptiness in all directions. She said the classroom was where she had always been most herself. She said that was still true. There is a kind of strength that gets misunderstood. It gets called not letting it show. It gets called keeping it together. It gets called not falling apart. But the thing Nicole Washington demonstrated on that stage, the thing that made millions of people share the clip and write about it and send it to each other and feel, watching it, that something had been said or done that needed to be said or done was not the suppression of feeling. It was the organization of it. It was the specific human capacity to feel something enormous and at the same time, in the same body, in the same moment, decide what you are going to do. Those two things do not cancel each other out. Feeling the thing fully and deciding what comes next are not incompatible. Nicole Washington felt it, and then she decided, and then she played, and then she won. She came for the money, she won the money. What the afternoon gave her that she had not come for, the clarity, the public record of who she was in the hardest moment she had faced in years. The $20,000 on the car seat beside her and her sister driving, and both of them understanding that some things take time. Those things had not been on the agenda. The universe gave them anyway. The universe tends to give those things when a person is being completely, precisely, honestly themselves, even when, especially when the situation would justify being something else. I came here to win money for my kids. I'm not done. She said it. She meant it. She did it. That is the whole story. That is the woman. She is not done. She was never going to be done. Anyone who had spent 9 minutes with her in that studio could have told you that. Anyone who had spent 9 years in her classroom already knew. If this story reached you, if something in Nicole's afternoon touched something in yours, or if it reminded you of someone whose strength you have witnessed and have never found the right words to name, share this today with the person you are thinking of right now. Leave a comment below and tell us what you carry with you from this story, because this community pays attention to each other in the comments, and your voice here matters more than you know. And if you are not already with us, subscribe right now, because every single week we come back with stories exactly like this one. Stories about people who are in the middle of something and who decide, in the middle of it, who they are going to be. Stories about the moment the truth arrives and what a person does with it. And stories about women who come to win and leave with everything they came for and more than they expected. We will see you in the next one.